Middlekauff! Heavy!
Live for this, Middlekauff.
What a day. What a holy shit day.
Woo!
Bye-bye, Russell.
Wow. We are live on YouTube right now, Tuesday, March 8th, 11:40 in the a.m. If you're listening to another version of this podcast that has like Deshaun Watson on the Seahawks, then that means we had to come back later. But for now, that didn't happen. That hasn't happened. I'm not
That would be a pretty big curveball, guy. That would be a curveball.
Tim Wakefield knuckler.
Yeah.
This is an emergency show on a day we were going to do a show anyway, but we just moved it up to be here, right now. Right here, right now.
It's a song.
Right here, right now, right here, right now. John, we are brought to you in part today by MyBookie.ag, promo code HAM and the number 1. MyBookie.ag, promo code HAM and the number 1, where right now you sign up with HAM1, you get a free entry into MyBookie's My Bracket contest. Predict winners in each round of the MyBookie bracket contest for a chance to win a Bitcoin, a Doodle NFT currently valued at over $50,000, and $100,000 more in cash prizes. Sign up right now at HAM1 or at MyBookie.ag. HAM1 is the promo code to secure free entry. Selections of the bracket officially begin March 13th. They close March 17th. So get your free entry locked in now.
Yep. And if you're watching this live on YouTube, you know, St. Mary's plus 12.5 against the Zags tonight. Don't really love that actually at all. I like Gonzaga huge.
Oh, okay.
I think it's a blowout city. But you have something up right now on a visual. Pretty interesting because with Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater, the ghost of Peyton Manning, Trevor Siemian, the whole crew, they are not a Super Bowl contender. We've seen them the last several years. They have not even been close. You give them Russell Wilson, they are immediately a Super Bowl contender. And you could argue the only reason this number is, you know, the Broncos are now 18-1 instead of being higher is probably because of the division they're in, right? It's just, it's not easy to win 12 games. Like they could go 10-7 with Russ, and it's just harder to win playoff games on the road. I would say if you put them in the AFC South, that number, I mean, the Titans, I guess, have a little worse odds. But to me, if you put them in the AFC South, the Broncos are probably like 12-1, not 18-1.
Maybe Seattle put them there on purpose, make it harder to make them look bad.
You know, you would think you would say that, you know, Nathaniel Hackett, UC Davis, no big deal, coming over from the Broncos. He just learned the LaFleur-Shanahan system. Russell Wilson last year, Shane Waldron, Russell Wilson, right, hired him essentially from the Rams. So there was, It's not like how Russell's got to learn this whole new scheme. No, I mean, he just did it, right? That's why he and him and Pete wanted the Rams scheme, and now they got it. I don't like that picture, guy. That was when I was fatter.
Oh, sorry.
You know, it's just, he's got the fat face. You don't have jawline, but it's
just
going
back. You're going, you know.
I know, but I can tell it was, you know, a little older, a little chubbier.
Yeah, that is old school graphics there. If you're listening to this podcast, all right. If you're watching this live show, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. We're glad so many of you are here today, flooding to the show. It's great to have you. If you're listening to the podcast, which is down in the description below. If you don't subscribe to our podcast, it's in the YouTube description. If you
share it with your friends,
the YouTube link is in the podcast description. Share it with your friends. Can we just, before we dive into just topics,
can we start saying share it with your enemies?
Share it with your enemies. I like that.
Share it with your enemies.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We are pro enemies here. Just
everyone's got some enemies.
Just a couple. Should we just rattle through some of the comments here? Just people reacting, John.
Yeah.
Matt says Niners play Denver this year. That's right. And in fact, Seattle hosts Denver this year. Niners play in Denver this year. Here's a comment from America Uncensored. Raiders going to have it hard AF.
Yes, they will.
Now officially time for a Raider rebuild. Evan says, do we have to worry about Seattle going after Deshaun Watson? We're just going to use some of these comments here to set the stage for the show today.
Peter King or Albert Breer wrote yesterday that the buzz at the Combine was every general manager in the Watson mix was very uneasy about doing any deal as long as everything was still out there. Now, you would say Seattle, I wouldn't say they're a renegade operation, but just historically, they've a little lower standards, a little Jerry Jones level.
Yeah, they was it Frank Clark? No, who was it? Frank Clark they drafted?
Yeah, they drafted Frank Clark. Yeah,
at a time when it was. I remember you and I have talked about this. I was just in Seattle the day it happened. I was in the car, turned on the radio. It's the old days, and everyone was pretty mad about it. Like,
he had hit her in the hotel room when he was in Michigan, right? And kicked off
his girlfriend.
Team.
Yeah.
So
yep,
and they still pulled the trigger. Now Andy eventually acquired. So he's.
Oh, that's right. That's right. This is madness, says Scott. This is Sparta, says Jason.
Sneaky. You see Mike Williams re-signed with the Chargers. Herbert kept a playmaker.
Did not say that. Were they going to tag him as a tight end like everybody else? Or
yeah. I mean, well, because it's tight end, because it's so cheap.
Would you see the splits on Gesicki? It's like Gesicki spent like, I don't even know what the percentages are. A very low percentage as a tight end in the slot and then out wide.
Would you see the difference between wide receiver tag and it's an $8 million difference?
Yeah, I know. Is it 8 or 7? Whatever it is.
I thought it was like 18-9 wide receiver or maybe it was 10-9 and 18 flat. So maybe it's 7. That's a big gap. Like if I'm George Kittle, like what the fuck is the difference of me and some of these other guys? Are you kidding me? I kind of like Gesicki.
Evan says, does this put pressure on the Colts to get better at QB since the AFC just got better? I had not thought about the Colts yet today. But sure. I mean, what are the Colts options?
Yeah, who knows? Great.
The day started with Rodgers, re-signing in Green Bay,
which was big news because it finally became official. But I think a lot of people had assumed that he was going to stay, right?
Yeah. Well, it also turned into big news because it led to this. I think, right? It feels to me. Well, let's dive in, John. Yeah. Should we just dive in? Should we start? We'll get back to some more of these comments.
I agree.
Later, I just want to don't lose any of these, because I might want to get back to them.
Hightower,
was there a Hightower in here?
Sucks for Hightower. He's got a scheme against the Packers, and they own the Bears.
That's right. Niners got a special teams coach, John.
Now you could also say that Hightower owns the Packers, right? A little spin zone.
It's a very good point. He could take them down.
He could.
It's like there's always one pitcher who owned Barry Bonds. Be like Barry Bonds couldn't get a hit off of Bobby Jones or something like that.
Well, I bet when Eberflus was pitching to the McCaskey family, he's like, I got a special teams coordinator. They're like, well, what, how is he? Is he a good coach? He's like, just look at the game against the Packers. They're like, we're in. Give him a race.
John Lieber. You remember John Lieber, the pitcher?
I don't, actually.
Oh. How about Tim Belcher? Do you remember Tim Belcher?
I don't either, no.
Jose Rijo. Do you remember Jose Rijo?
I do remember Jose Rijo.
Okay. Yep. Barry Bonds hit 211 off Jose Rijo. 388 on base. But
yeah. I felt like Greg Maddux had some ownage.
Greg Maddux might have had some. It feels like that could be right.
Yeah.
I remember there's a story of some random who had ownage on Greg Maddux.
Do you want to start with some lockout talk before we dive into Russell?
I got to tell you, John, making the bases 2 inches bigger. Woo! Stolen bases through the roof stonks.
See, I was going to go the other way. What if you made the bases the size of like a golf ball and just made the sport really weird?
Just every play at the base is just like one of these battles to get to the bag.
I think that would be even sweet. Maybe like the size of a baseball, or just something.
I love that idea.
Yeah,
play it second, and everyone's just dancing around.
That's what I would do.
Philo on the stream says Bonds crushed Maddox.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, he owned Maddox. He owned Greg.
John, Russell Wilson was traded. Shocking news. The trade has not yet officially been consummated. That involves DK and Pete Carroll taking their shirts off. But here is what the deal is. Rap sheet says Broncos send Russell Wilson and a fourth, or get Russell Wilson and a fourth. Seattle gets 2 1s, 2 2s, a fifth, Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant. Shelby Harris is a defensive end. Okay, Noah Fant's a tight end. Drew Lock's a quarterback. Yep. Pretty shocking details, I would say, just there. But I guessed in my head more is what was exchanged when I heard this trade was done.
Well, it's a bad tight end draft. A buddy from the Combine texted me when after the UCLA kid ran, and I just immediately text, first rounder? And he said, no, third. And I said, and then he responded, bad tight end class. Noah Fant, if you remember, was a first-round pick. He is a very talented guy with a lot of speed. That means he's got a fifth-year option. So that player in itself, to me, has value. Noah Fant, I'd say he's worth on the open market maybe a second-round pick, right? So I think you have to look at it like that. I think, say, the shocking part is they didn't get 3 ones. Mm-hmm. Now, as someone texts me or DM me about the 49ers trade relative to, like, other trades, they're like, when you give up picks, like this year the Niners for Trey Lance are giving Miami Dolphins, right, pick whatever, 29. That is not the same as the Denver Broncos. This is always why you do trades before the draft. Remember, we were very critical of the Khalil Mack trade because, and you saw it with the Lions, right? The Lions are picking 32. So you're going to give Matt Stafford away for pick 32 and let's say pick 26. That's not ideal. The Seattle does get pick 9. Now, I would say pick 9, the value of a pick is a little dependent on the talent in the draft. Now, the way we look at a draft before the draft and a couple years after obviously changes, but pick 9 is pretty valuable, right? They're going to say we're going to get an immediate impact starter, even though it's not a quarterback. It's not. There's no quarterbacks viewed going there, but you never know. So I'd say pick 9 and their second round pick, is pretty good too. So you get 2 valuable picks immediately in this draft. And then I had forgotten because I immediately go to Wiki because I was like, oh, where did the Denver Broncos pick? Well, I had forgotten that Seattle doesn't have a first-round pick. So it's not like they're coming in hot with 2 first-round picks because the Jets have their first-round pick. So it's
Jamal Adams.
It does show that, they're a little desperate. I think this also shows that Russell Wilson wanted out, right? To me, it's not just Seattle wanted to get rid of him. Like, it's pretty clear Russell Wilson was done with Seattle. Now, he's lucky he didn't actually have to kind of go full Rodgers like last year and like totally demand, but I think it's fair to say he was pushing for this, right?
Yep.
And Seattle's like, fuck it, we're over it. Let's just move on. Though, when you see that compensation just written out, let's face it, it doesn't look like much, right?
No, it doesn't.
Easiest trade the Denver Broncos will ever make.
Keep in mind, by the way, it was February, just over a year ago, that Schefter said that Russ's agent said he would only go to the Cowboys, Saints, Raiders, and Bears. Right? He's not the Broncos are not the Cowboys, Saints, the Raiders, or the Bears. So things change. I'm with you. Like, for a blockbuster trade, as you said to me before we started, is this one of the biggest trades in NFL? Is this the biggest trade? It's definitely one of the biggest trades in NFL history. And part of, I think, what will make it big is what comes next. Seattle's clearly trading low on Russell, right? Now, part of this is Russell's contract, while it has 2 years left on it, doesn't have any guaranteed money this year or next. So you're probably going to have to pay him. Would you agree with that?
I think it's fair to say that this podcast believes he will get a $150+ million extension, this, right, April, May, June, sometime, right? Yeah. The Denver Broncos, all their chips are in the middle of the table on Russell Wilson, as they should be.
And they should be. And you could make the case if you were Seattle that you would not give Russ the contract that the Packers just gave. Part of the reason you wouldn't give it is because Russ doesn't want to be there. Denver, I thought once Aaron didn't force a trade to Denver was looking at quarterback purgatory. I mean, they were really in purgatory.
Well, they've been in it, right?
Yeah, that's right. And so I got no issue with them doing this. I think they have to, and they are. And I don't think they're crazy to bet on a Russell Wilson bounce back. But I don't think if you had said, imagine at 4 games into 2021 when Russell was on pace to put together a historic season, saying Russell gets traded, and this is the compensation: 2 1s, 2 2s, a 5th, and like a quarterback that you don't think is the quarterback of the future, Drew Lock.
Not only right in the mix to win the MVP, they won the division the COVID year, right?
Yeah. But what was their record? What was the record?
12-4, and they hosted a playoff game. Now, in Seattle fashion, it wasn't like 12-4 blowing teams out. It was like they were squeaking by some teams. They've been weird for a while. I will say this, though. They went 3. People act like they're the Giants or the Jags. Like, oh, Seattle in fucking shambles. They swept the 49ers, who were, obviously, we'll talk about coming up, in the NFC Championship game. They beat the piss out of the Arizona Cardinals the last game of the season. They went 3-3 in the toughest division. And if you've watched, like we have, and probably a large percentage of the people listening to this, a lot of NFC West football, they play the NFC West with, and mainly because of him, they are in the mix in these games. Their problem is like they can lose to the Jets, they can lose to the Giants, they can lose to the Jags. They just have weird moments with weird teams, but they are not. I think they get dissed and talked about like they're a franchise a little different than they actually are. Like this year was a joke for them. They went 7-10, and Russell missed several games, and Geno had to start. That's the other part about last year, right? They went 7-10. They missed him for a while.
Right.
He didn't play all the games, and then by the time he got back and kind of got his mojo again, they did look pretty good down the stretch, right? They were playing good football the last couple of weeks because of him.
It's his first losing season
in his career, yeah, in the Pete Russell era.
11-5, 13-3, 12-4, 10. This is his QB record. 11-5, 13-3, 12-4, 10-6, 10-5, 9-7, 10-6, 11-5, 12-4, and then this year they were 6-8 with him as a starter.
Don't you think they get talked about like a 3 or 4 win team, not a team that was, probably a couple snaps away from being 500?
I think it's two things. I think it's one, like you said, the way they play, like they play in some really bizarre games, lose some games
weird.
You don't think they should.
Look weird.
They're fun. And I think thing number 2 is that specifically social media, kind of advanced metric Twitter, thinks Pete doesn't know how to run an offense.
All the elites on Twitter think Pete's the village idiot, even though he's won a Super Bowl, been to another, and won multiple national championships. But every fucking guy with 3 degrees that writes for their local newspaper with a blue check mark thinks Pete's an idiot. And listen, no coach is perfect, but
I don't think it's the local newspaper guys.
I'm the people that write for the blogs or what newspaper. I don't even know they exist. I'm just saying, like, we all know who we're talking about here.
But I'm just saying it's not. Yeah, it's not mostly it's specifically. I don't even want to denigrate it by saying analytics Twitter. It's not that simple, but
analytics Twitter is essentially these writers.
Yeah, that's a big part of it, and I think that's where it comes from.
Brandon Staley's base. If Brandon Staley was a politician, his base.
There's a whole other AFC conversation coming, so we got some for Brandon Staley as well. But
I saw you remember how you brought up that Warren Sharp gambling article like a month ago in the New Yorker or whatever? People were like, the story no one's talking about with Calvin Ridley. Like he was into gambling and talking to offensive coordinators. I was like, this is Warren Sharp feels like kind of flying. Are the feds after him right now or something? It feels like he's disappeared.
Maybe Calvin was betting through him, or he was betting through Calvin.
Who knows?
Regardless. I can't believe. Can you believe this happened? I think sometimes we dive into like the topic. Can you believe Russell Wilson just got traded to the Broncos? He's going to be a Bronco.
There are obviously always wow moments in sports. It happens less and less, I'd say, in the NBA because these guys demand trades forever, and you just know they're going to get traded. In baseball, it's not as powerful as it probably was. I'd say they always had huge moments, like when we were growing up, in massive trades. I would say from a football standpoint, we've seen Jamal Adams get traded to Seattle, right? Jalen Ramsey. I remember Shady McCoy when Chip traded him. We've seen crazy trades in the NFL. I truly believe, guy, this is the biggest trade in NFL history when you factor in a quarterback in his prime. Like Montana was traded, but it felt like he was hanging on by a thread, and he only played 2 more seasons. Ultimately, Brady and Manning, Peyton Manning was cut by the Indianapolis Colts. Tom Brady became a free agent. And they, Tom obviously was in his 40s. Peyton was, we just didn't know if he was going to play again. His neck.
Yeah.
This to me is, I think sometimes it's hyperbole when you say this, but when has a player in his prime, definitely in the modern era, in the 2000s or the 2020s, this is easily I would say the biggest trade of the Roger Goodell NFL era, right? I mean, this guy's a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback that has minimum, you would say, 3-4 years left in his prime. Like, you have a good team around him, you can win the Super or compete to win the Super Bowl. Like, part of the reason is like, well, Seattle couldn't win a Super Bowl with Russ in his prime. Yeah, because they kept fucking up the draft picks and doing weird stuff. It wasn't because he was good enough to at least put them in competition. You and I watched, we've seen probably average 6-7 games. Anyone that lives on the West Coast, you've seen a lot of Russell Wilson games, and he is a spectacular player. I do believe to my core, listen, he can be a little weird, and like, will he show up to the Denver Bronco press conference with security? Who knows? But just
orange
as a player,
leather, 100% he's wearing orange leather.
As a player in a vacuum, he's one of the most remarkable talents I've ever watched. I find him just as an awesome, awesome player. Does he have some flaws? For sure, but he is. I still thought last year, like he had some down moments, but he's an elite player.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Like people are mentioning the Herschel Walker trade, which was 18 picks or players, 18 elements got traded in that trade. Randy Moss was a big one. I think Tom, just as a free agent, you just talk about biggest moves in NFL history. Montana getting traded to the Chiefs.
Yeah. If you just if you just use our adult life, right?
Yeah. Brady but this is without question. I think part of it too is, I was thinking about this the other day. Like one of the things the NFL has going for it is that it has these quarterbacks who are stars, and quarterbacks don't change teams. In the rare instances that even average quarterbacks change teams, like when Kirk Cousins changes teams, it's a big story. You don't get this a lot. When you get it, it's massive. Baseball has less stars because it has devalued starting pitching, and obviously the NBA stars are moving too much, and that creates an issue. The NFL has the sweet spot where it's got its stars. They don't change teams. Like it'd feel weird if Rodgers and Russ had changed teams this year. Rodgers stays, Russ moves. And we'd been kind of ready. The Russ one had been bubbling for a little while. I think what you said about Russ saying he's in his prime is really interesting, because would you say if let's say Aaron got traded to the Broncos today instead of Russell Wilson, would you say Aaron Rodgers got traded in his prime?
I mean, he's won back-to-back MVPs.
Did I say Aaron Wilson? Aaron Rodgers?
But his age, it's different, 38 and 33.
Right. I mean, but he's playing at a higher level right now than Russ is. Russ is from an age standpoint.
Aaron's a better player than Russell Wilson.
Part of this is like, is Russ going to trim up a little and bounce back? I mean, he was 25 touchdowns, 6 picks. He was under 65%. I think everyone in Seattle that covered him felt like he was off this year. I felt like that watching him.
To piggyback off what you said, though, Rodgers really is, while there was a lot of drama surrounding it, the end result is what happens. When you have elite player at the quarterback, he just stays on the team. And I saw Peter King say, if you're 35 years old at the end of this contract, your entire life will be Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers. You've had 2 quarterbacks your entire life. And that really is kind of the NFL, right? Tom Brady, while he ended up leaving, he left at 42 years old. Peyton Manning, like, they would not have cut him if they didn't think his neck was never going to work, right? Russell Wilson, part of this, ultimately he did stay there for 10 years, right? Like, ultimately, Kevin Durant, I think an underrated part about his career, he was in OKC, I think, for 9. Right? It's not like he was there 3. He was there for a long period of time. Russell was in Seattle, right, for a decade. Mm-hmm. Like that still is a long. It's not like he moved after 2 or 3 years. If Deshaun Watson moves teams, which feels likely at some point, that was a pretty short stint for a guy that's an elite player. Most teams that get a player of that caliber don't ever let him go for. Look at all the quarterbacks of Rodgers' era, right? Rivers, Roethlisberger, Eli. I mean, these guys minimum all the same team for 15 plus years. That to me is normal. That's what makes, like, I'm sorry, you can bring up Herschel Walker trades or any of these trades. If it does not involve a quarterback, it's not as big. Period, point blank, end of story.
I agree, although, when Herschel Walker got traded, running back.
Yeah. But that was when we were both 4,
Well, Jerry Jones still runs a team like that.
How?
I think Ezekiel's cap number is what was it, $18 million?
But they traded Herschel Walker.
No, I know. I'm just saying he still values running backs.
Yeah, he does. That's true. And now he's had some sweet ones, right? Emmett.
Yes.
Zeke, in fairness to Zeke, I used to love young Zeke. He just fell off a cliff fast.
Somebody just tweeted at me. You guys said 4 1s for Russ. The Twitter handle is McDaniel's season. So Raider fan just tweeted at me, throwing it in our face that we said 4 1s for Russ.
I think most people thought something like that. I think it is pretty shocking.
You did say that. I'm stunned.
Now, to me, Noah Fant,
it's hard to trade 4 1s because you can't trade more. You'd have to have multiple ones in a year, and the Seahawks barely have 1 1, let alone 2 1s, right?
But you can trade 4.
But don't 2 of them have to be in the same year? You can't trade a 1 4 years out?
I thought 4 is the max. I thought
it was 3. Okay, maybe.
But why does Seattle matter that they don't have ones? Denver's the ones giving them, right?
Oh yeah. In any event,
to me, I think it's pretty wild. Now, I think the way you have to look at it is they got 2 1s and 3 2s, because I do think at minimum that's Noah Fant's value. Like if Noah Fant's going to get traded, a young player at tight end that can fly, who was drafted I think he was picked 20. you would say he has like there's value in him. Like he's getting valued in this trade, but to only have 2-1. But I would say this, like ultimately once you trade Russell, next year's one, we're all going to pick the Denver Broncos to make the playoffs, especially now with 7 seeds, right? So that pick is going to be in the 20s. So you would say the 3-1s, like, are you going to trade 3 years from now another pick in the 20s? Or what is my 9th overall draft pick worth to you? And that is valuable because you can ultimately turn 9. Look at last year, the New York Giants turned 11 into 20 and basically another first-round pick. And we know, you-know-who loves to trade back. Would it shock you if they go from 9 to 18 and gather another one and just start rebuilding this thing?
Now it wouldn't shock me. If you would given me that scenario before this trade, it would surprise me a little based on Pete's age. But it's not really the way, they've got DK, they've got Tyler Lockett. They don't have a ton of depth elsewhere, but they
didn't have a first-round pick.
I know. Well, but I'm just saying, like, rebuild is like, are they really going to roll into the season with Drew Lock as their quarterback?
Well, the moment you trade Russell Wilson, unless you somehow they end up with Deshaun Watson, they're somewhat waving the white flag on their franchise, right?
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Unless somehow they end up with Deshaun Watson, which has been a suggestion around the internet. And Peter Schrager did just tweet eye emojis about 20 minutes ago. No idea what that's about. Could just be him reacting to this Russell Wilson trade. But I think there is that fear that lurks over everything. If you are, say, a fan of an NFC West team. Outside of that, though, how much did this trade change the dynamic of the NFC? He went from the NFC to the AFC. He went from a team that was consistently an NFC playoff team to a team that's in the AFC. He went from a team that stood in definitely the Niners' way. We'll talk about the Niners separately. But when you rattled off the teams every year, even I probably would have picked him to go to the playoffs this year with Russell Wilson back.
Yeah, you just hit it on the head, though. This year, based on their resume, is an outlier. This year was not only not the norm, it was far away from what they were used to. This, over the last decade of Russell Wilson, this was 2 losses worse than their worst season. The previous year, they had won the division and won 12 games. They have owned the Niners. 16-4 against them historically. They play really, really well against the Rams and the Cardinals. Like, they play like, and the Rams have been now a consistent playoff team for half a decade. So this team, to me, went from being a consistent playoff team for 10 years with him at the helm, to now, unless they find a way to get a star quarterback, is irrelevant. Like, they are, if they just have some random, they can sign a Trubisky or a Drew Lock and draft a guy, like, to me, they're a 4-win team. They are the way we've actually talked about them, which is a big swing because on any given week, if they're playing the Packers, if they were playing Tom Brady in Tampa, if they're playing obviously the Niners or the Rams, they can win. And then they've hosted playoff games for a long time, and it's not just with the LOB squad. It was 2 years ago with Jamal Adams, right? I actually think he missed that playoff game because he was injured, and ultimately Heineke and Jared Goff beat him. Now, it was a little skewed because if you remember, Seattle wasn't allowed to have fans, and that's a huge part, right? The home game there would have been the 12s, but it was an empty stadium. But still, like, they hosted a playoff game 13 months ago.
I know. It's funny, John. They beat the Colts week 1. Outside of that, their only good wins came against the division, and they just happened to be against the Niners twice, and they beat the Cardinals once. Other than that, they beat the Texans, the Lions, and the Jags. So I don't think they're going to do that 2 years in a row. I'm with you. Like, I think that was not an indication. Now, maybe they weren't going to be a Super Bowl contender, but to find a way to have that team go 7-10, I think was an indication that it was I think it was an outlier, is what I'm saying.
Well, as long as he was on the team, just from a business standpoint in the league, they were an entertainment product for the league, right? You could throw them in a big game on Sunday afternoon with Troy and, them against the Niners and them against the Rams. You could put them on Sunday Night Football. You could put them on Monday Night Football. Like, they are not that anymore. Like, they're an irrelevant squad, right? You know how when the committee comes up, they always we take into account you missing players. So if like Johnny Davis from Wisconsin, I don't know what his status is, but let's just say he's out for a month, they will not be a 1 seed. Like, it's over. Remember when Kenyon Martin shattered his leg, and they're like, well, we evaluate that. Sometimes it happens with the college committee in college football. They are no longer getting like Sunday and Monday night. They're an irrelevant franchise minus this player, which kind of sucks. I have enjoyed just the Seattle experience, that just them being in my life it's just them against the Niners, them in the division, they're an entertainment product that no longer exists. And it'll be interesting. Does that just translate to Denver? It felt like it was part of just Pete and the whole and Russell, the combo.
Yeah.
Which it's over. I mean, it's dead on arrival.
It is. You're right. And I think last year's a good example too, even at 7-10 with the wins that they had that were not particularly good wins. As you said earlier, there's 7 seeds in the NFL playoffs now. The AFC was really deep last year. The NFC was not. I mean, Seattle was not. It's not like Seattle played half the season dead to the playoffs, right? New Orleans was 9-8, same as Philly. Philly was the 7 seed at 9-8. Minnesota was 8-9. Washington football team was 7-10, same record as Seattle. They weren't. I wouldn't say they were close to the playoffs, but they were in the playoff conversation down the stretch of the season. It got a little weird, and they needed a few things to break their way.
You're saying like the Chargers who missed the playoffs in the AFC were better than all these teams you're listing, right?
Yeah, and the Colts, and maybe even the Dolphins,
and a healthy
Cleveland,
Ravens.
and
the
Baltimore.
Ravens.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, great Seattle is what we're used to. Even shitty Seattle is potentially a playoff team.
I agree.
Like they were, I don't want to say almost a playoff team, but almost a playoff team.
Wouldn't you say the NFC right now is, the AFC is stacked. The NFC, Brady retired. The Saints.
He's not going to be back on the Bucs.
Yeah, so the Bucs are no longer a 12-13 win team. That division sucks. As of right now, the NFC East, like as long as Jalen Hurts is their quarterback, I don't care how great their draft becomes, they're just going to be flawed. Dallas, we've seen they just got issues. Even if they are, a lock, you would say if they just bring back the majority, they're an 11-win team.
Well, they're cutting one of their best players. Yeah. I know Amari had a down year, but
scored a touchdown in the playoff game pretty easily, actually, wide open in the corner of the end zone. So to me, the NFC right
Arizona
now,
might have a holdout at quarterback.
Well, did you see he put all the pictures back? Did you send me that?
I did see that, yes.
Yeah, so everything's good. Do you just keep that in the hopper? Or did he have to, did he have someone do that?
Reactive? Yeah. I love the idea of him staying up till 2 a.m. doing it.
But you would say that they are one of the better teams. The Niners are one of the better teams, too, clearly, but they have question court. To me, the only two teams that don't have
Sean
questions.
Payton's gone from the conference.
See ya, right? Adios. It's just, to me, the Rams and the Packers are the for sure things. I would say the Niners are a close third, but they do have a major question mark at first-year quarterback right now, right?
Well, and also say what you want about Arizona. Arizona does beat the 49ers.
Yeah.
They had a better record than them this last year.
Yeah, I guess they beat them 3 of the last 4 times, huh?
They went. They went 11-6. Niners were 10-7. But yeah, it's funny. Just because you weren't a playoff team last year like Seattle wasn't. They were the 11th place team in the conference. It does change the power, just the everything. It changes everything. You just have to worry about them. Now, you still play AFC teams. Sometimes you still play these teams, but it's been a pretty crazy year for the NFC already with Aaron back, which is a big deal. If Aaron had left, but with Aaron back, but with Brady, 2 of the best quarterbacks in the league just left the NFC.
Russell and Brady.
Yeah.
And you would say, listen, like you brought up his name, they had Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, Ian Book, Trevor Siemian. Their quarterback was really a joke position once Jameis tore his ACL, and they went 9-8 with Sean Payton. He was a $15-16 million a year coach for a reason.
Yeah, good
right?
point.
They were not. They owned the Bucs with Brady. It's fair to say Dennis Allen, even if they they clearly have good players. Will you be shocked if the Saints are 6-11 or 7-10 next year? No.
What's the path back this year for Atlanta? What's the path back for Chicago? What's the path for Carolina, the Giants, and the Lions?
There's a lot of shitty teams. NFC. There's a lot of shitty teams in the NFC.
Is Kevin O'Connell a really good coach? Is Minnesota going to bounce back?
Yeah, you would say Minnesota has really even had some weird years, but been right there the last couple years, right? They have more talent than all the teams you just listed. I would say Minnesota would be they have to be thinking we can compete for a wild card, right? But you would say the Niners should be better than them because they are. But Kirk Cousins is a proven commodity, and Trey Lance just isn't. Now, if Trey Lance is just solid immediately, the Niners are a 12-win team.
Kenneth on the stream says Commanders offered high picks the next 3 years per PFT just now. So I have the Florio article up right now. Last week there was a report that they made a strong offer. According to multiple reports, Commanders offered high picks in 22, 23, and 24. But the same reports also note Washington got the indication that Seattle preferred to deal him out of the NFC. All right, so he doesn't actually add anything new there. But, I mean, that is something here, right? Keeping him out of the NFC. Would they prefer to send him to the Commanders? I mean, to the Broncos and the Commanders?
I do believe that they wanted him out of the NFC, which to me is the right move.
It's the right move if you're going to compete. Like, if you're going to be the last place team in the conference or you're going to be bad, who cares? And so they don't think they're going to be bad.
No, to me, it's regardless about you. You don't want to see him thriving in your conference.
But see, this is where I would argue if you're going to do a rebuild. Well, it makes me think they're not into. They think they can find a way to be
This
good.
is the NFL. There is no, unless you're like the Jags, you're never thinking we're going to win 3 games. That's just not how people think. Even if that's the reality.
If you pass up an extra first-round pick. Now, maybe it's like, yeah, we passed up picks, but Washington couldn't offer us Drew Lock, who we don't think is great, but we actually think could be serviceable, right? That might be the difference. That's part of it.
What about Noah Fant? Like, I immediately get a tight end.
Yeah, I'm saying ultimately to take less if you're in Seattle's position only makes sense if you think you're really competing.
But know this, and whether you believe this or not, or like whether this makes sense, this is how the league. 3 years from now, a first round pick is not viewed as that great. It's viewed as a second round pick. So, and immediately you have to know this. If I give you Russell Wilson, like ultimately the Commanders would have given a pretty good pick, right? Because I have to look where they're drafting, but top 12. If you give me
11.
next year's one, I have to assume you're going to be in the 20s. Like ultimately Seattle is assuming the 2023 Denver Bronco pick is going to be 24, 26, 22. So I'm getting pick 9 right now, and Noah Fant and Shelby Harris, solid defensive tackle. Like I think I'm getting stuff right now.
Yeah, that's the only point I'm addressing here is keeping him out of your conference, which I understand. But to me, I only really understand it. I mean, I understand it. Period. I think it's dangerous to take less, whatever less is. You're right. They might view that third one as less than getting Drew Lock and Shelby Harris and Noah Fant, and that's fine. But I think if you're them to take less to keep him out of your conference, part of you has to think we're going to be good and it's going to matter if he's in our conference.
I think the question is, could they have gotten, now these picks aren't as good as pick 9, but Howie has pick 16, 19, and like 21 or something. Would Howie have given all 3 picks for Russell Wilson?
You tell me. You worked for him.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think
you or him, would you have done it? I would have.
I would have too. And again, this goes back to maybe it's a non-starter, giving them just like seeing the Eagles start making the playoffs every year, and it's going to be hard. Like if you're a Seattle fan today, it feels like your franchise is over, which sucks.
Yeah. But by the way, the other point, they didn't just send him to the AFC; they sent him to the AFC West.
Yeah,
with Herbert and Mahomes and Carr.
But I also think like Russell, and if Rodgers has gone, they don't think about it like that. Like Russell thinks I'm better than Herbert, and I'm definitely better than Derek.
Yeah. Russell does. I'm just saying, if you're Seattle and you care about him not winning the Super Bowl, and you care about him not having so much success that it makes you look bad, and you're keeping him out of the NFC.
I don't think it's as much about not winning the Super Bowl. I just think like I give them the Eagles or the Commanders, like they're going to the playoffs every year. Like it's not a 100% lock Denver makes the playoffs, right? They have a new coach. What if the coach isn't that good, right? They haven't been in the playoffs for a while. We think all their players are sweet. Are they really? I mean, we're about to find out. There are still a lot of unknowns with Denver. We're assuming, and I am too, but we're gonna find out quick. Like, is their talent overrated? I don't know. I don't think so, but we've seen it before, right?
Absolutely. I actually, for an AFC conversation later, I think there's something there about what should we be assuming right now about Denver. But pretty crazy, by the way, just as an aside. So Denver ends up with Peyton Manning in his second tour and then Russell Wilson. Interesting quarterback dynamic they've got going.
I think I saw Florio wrote 10 years, this offseason, 10 years ago, this is when they landed Peyton.
Wow. When the plane was at Duke?
Pretty
But
wild.
remember, wasn't Harbaugh, was it Duke
Yeah.
or Carolina somewhere, which is where Duke is? But John, before we go any further, let's tell the people about how easy Bronco fans are sleeping tonight on their Sleep Number bed, sleepnumber.com/ham. I know Russ gets his sleep. Russ gets in his workouts. Russ gets in his sleep. I don't know if he's sleeping on the softer side like John is. His sleep number's 40, or maybe a little firmer like me, a 55. Good sleep is the key to good life. 7 to 9 hours is what's recommended by sleep experts. You can get it at sleepnumber.com/ham.
It's really easy, guy. Go to sleepnumber.com/ham. Here's the key. The better you sleep, the more productive you are. And the better you sleep, let's face it, is dependent on the type bed you have. We've all, when we're on the road traveling, doing, just paying the bills out there, working, banging the bushes, and you go to a hotel room and the bed's terrible and you sleep poorly, and then all of a sudden you're thrown off. You don't want to do that because you spend so much time, right, in your bed. It's where you're going to spend the majority of your life sleeping. It's a long time, 7, 8, 9 hours a night. Sometimes
the majority
might be 10. The majority, yeah, math doesn't quite add up there, but a very loud minority of your life in that bed. So
your bed is Twitter.
So it is very, very important that you have a good bed, and Guy and I can both pound the table for our friends at sleepnumber.com/ham.
Few things. 4 tips to improve your sleep duration. Avoid large meals and heavy snacks before sleep.
Oh.
Set a sleep goal that's healthy and realistic for your lifestyle. Try some tart cherry juice for its tryptophan and melatonin. May promote better and longer sleep. And record how you've slept. And hello, the Sleep Number 360 smart bed tracks the total time you sleep and the percentage of your sleep that is restful. Discover special offers now for limited time at your local Sleep Number store. Or we encourage you to do this. Go to sleepnumber.com/ham. Sleep Number. Proven quality sleep is life-changing sleep.
Bobby Wagner, Sherm a prophet. Sherm quoted it. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. I don't even know what they're talking about, but
just Bobby's not happy that
no,
Russ
I don't think he cares. I think he's more like we're talking shit about this guy. That's how I view it.
Wait, read me the tweet again.
Bobby just Sherm a prophet, and then Sherm had the you either die a hero or live long enough to become a villain. I think it's more that they were saying like,
he's been around long enough, and now he was the villain.
I don't know what Sherm means. I just mean they're both on the same page. They just think this guy's kind of fraudulent and doing some weird things.
Yeah, I just want to know the meaning. So did he just die a villain, or live long enough? What was it?
I think Sherm's talking about himself. I don't know.
I guess the point is it normally ends badly, is the point of that quote, right?
Yes.
If you're riding high, eventually they'll tear you down.
I think they're both saying like this guy tries to act like something he's not.
Interesting. Yeah.
Doesn't feel like a lot of people. How often, I would even say this about Aaron Rodgers. You have a lot more people getting his back. I mean, the star left tackle just had him officiate his wedding, right? And Devontae clearly loves him. Like a lot of guys, Jordy Nelson, like James Jones, like a lot of people that have played with Aaron Rodgers are openly discuss how much that like they call him a friend, right? I'd say AJ Hawk, they're boys. Like, God, it does not. Tom Brady is the highest level. I'd say Peyton Manning's not on Tom's level, but Peyton's definitely like higher than Rodgers' level, where guys love him. I would say that Russell, of all the great quarterbacks, when does anyone ever support him? Like, that's my fucking dude. That is my guy, man. Never. Like, Bobby Wagner didn't tweet like, I'm going to miss this dude, man. He tweeted about Sherm. Like, and these guys aren't dumb. They understand where their bread's buttered. You need a good quarterback. It does not feel like he's well-liked. Because I think it goes back to he feels like the Gavin Newsom or something of quarterback. It's just very it's all fake. Like, are you a real human? And I've had people DM me that are like, listen, my cousin played with him at NC State for a minute. Like, that's just kind of how he is. He's just kind of robotic. I just think it's hard for normal people to just truly believe, like, you can't be this big of a robot. Like, can you just act normal? Can you? And maybe you can't.
You know what's funny is I know somebody who played with him and always would say I asked him about it all the time. It's like he's not a bad guy. He's just sometimes hard to connect with, was the way he put it. I saw him give a pump-up speech to the Stanford women's basketball team today. He came off very normal, like just kind of on the mic, just talking to a squad. I was kind of taken aback, like, oh, that was just kind of normal. It was kind of cool. But by the way, I
think if he would act like that more often around these guys, maybe there's a vulnerability he refuses. Like clearly, part of connecting with people is like you got to be quote unquote vulnerable, like aka just be normal. Like, hey man, I'm having a rough day. It doesn't feel like Russell does that stuff.
And those things are, you can be whatever you're going to be publicly. It's the private conversations that make the difference, right? Like you can act like whatever you're going to act publicly. If you just act normal behind the scenes, people don't care if you act different. Like whatever he does, he promotes himself out there. But in this locker room, he's one of us, which is always the positive on Brady, right?
I would say that players don't judge you at all publicly. They know the deal, right? You're making money, do whatever. They can make fun of you. I know
he doesn't drink Gatorade. He's a Powerade guy. Fraud.
Remember, think about it. It was like Peyton Manning. Who wants to get in their Prius? It's like you can be fake.
Did Peyton have a Prius commercial?
No, maybe it was Buick. It was something that he was not.
It was Buick.
Buick. But so did Tiger forever, remember? It's like Tiger wasn't driving Buick.
Shaq had the Buick commercial. Now
Shaq had like
the
Prius.
Gas tank 45%. Maybe it was something smaller.
Instead of going 80, you just go 420s.
The funny part about that is like it gets to half, then you put in 20 and it's full. It's like, Shaq, have you not filled up a gas tank since a long time? It's not $20 for half your tank, man. Maybe he is driving a Prius, John. The Chicago Sun-Times pulled this one up. The Bears offered last year 3 ones, including number 20, plus a third and veteran players. Unclear who they offered, but might have been Akeem Hicks and Kyle Fuller. Maybe getting a player back. You know what makes me wonder? The fact that the Seahawks did this trade. Did the Seahawks offer this trade to the Raiders? Would they have preferred Derek Carr to Drew Lock?
Well, they probably wouldn't give him Darren Waller, right? So what could they give him to be an impact offensive player? You can't like Josh Jacobs.
But would Derek Carr be worth more than Drew Lock and Noah Fant together?
So 2 ones and Derek Carr, that's the deal?
Yeah, maybe 2 ones. Maybe the Raiders would go like, no, we think we can get 2 ones for Derek otherwise, so that's giving you 4 ones. Maybe that would be, I don't know. I just wonder if you're the Seahawks and you would take this deal, would you have preferred 2 ones and Derek and like no other players, but maybe also a third or something?
I just think there is a power, regardless of what you think about this draft, in the 9th overall pick. Like that's a valuable asset.
Yeah.
Now ultimately it's just a resource you have to turn into things, but like if you think you can wheel and deal, which I would say John Schneider is known as a wheeler and dealer, doesn't mean he always does the deal right, but he is. I'll be a little surprised if they drafted 9, won't you? Like I guess it will not shock me if they do something with that pick.
Yeah, it will not shock me. It will not shock me. But it also wouldn't shock me if they just were here right now. We think we can get the centerpiece of our, I know it's not viewed as a great draft, but what if Kayvon Thibodeau's sitting there and they really like Kayvon Thibodeau?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. If Kayvon Thibodeau's there, they will take him, right?
Or what if they're prepared to trade one of their receivers and they draft a receiver? Or what do they trade DK?
Get another one?
Yeah. I don't know. The Seattle Seahawks team Twitter accounts are just sometimes. The Seattle Seahawks Twitter account just tweeted the clip of Tom Hanks waking up on his raft and screaming, "Wilson, where are you?"
Can you bring up my tweet? I think it was really good, and I knew I had it in the hopper, and I think it went pretty viral. A live look inside the Niners facility. It was probably like 2 or 3 tweets ago.
Stand by.
I retweeted you. It's an hour ago.
I can't believe the Seahawks Twitter page tweeted that.
Yeah, but the NFL. I mean, I saw a bunch of like the Arizona Cardinals. Yeah, you're right though. Why would they be tweeting about Wilson?
Stand by. It's a good tweet.
It's a good tweet. Not to my own horn, but
the funny part about it is the guy on the left. Like he lives there. Live look inside the 49er facility. Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan hugging. It's got levels because the second level of the tweet is that Mike Shanahan is inside the 49er facility as one of, the smart guys.
Yeah, it was less about Mike Shanahan and just more the picture of Kyle, the excitement. I could have found. I just had it. It was easier. It was one of the first ones I found in the hopper. If it would have been Lynch, I would also used it. There are several I could have used for this. It was more just the visual of the excitement of the 49ers getting rid. I was thinking about it before we hopped on. Once the trade happened, I would say in my lifetime in the '90s, I felt like Brett Favre fucking owned the Niners. Whether that statistically is true, I don't know. I was in junior high. And we remember we went over when they were playing the Packers. Remember, they had played them 4 straight years, and we talked about the rivalry and why it is a rivalry, especially for people our age, because we experienced as children, and then it's happened this last decade. They played 8 times in the playoffs. Unlike it was a lot different than the Cowboy rivalry because it's actually happened. Like, they haven't played the Cowboys in a meaningful game in the playoffs since the mid-'90s. Like, this rivalry happened in the late '90s. They played 4 straight times, and the Packers won 3 out of 4. They also felt like played every single year in the regular season, a little bit like Manning and Brady because it was Young versus Favre. It just felt like Favre was a Niner killer. Again, statistically, might not back it up. That's what my young memory. What I know for a fact, and I don't need statistics, I mean, even though we have him 16-4, I have watched Russell Wilson since he got into the league up until this year when the Niners went to the NFC Championship and they went 7-10, kick the shit out of the 49ers. Make play after play after play, throw these balls on Fox with... We've had every single announcer calling it, from Troy to Joe when the games have mattered to when the Niners have been out of it, with Chris Myers and some random former New York Giant calling the game. The ball goes into the air really high. It disappears. You could not see the wide receiver, and all you think on the couch is, that guy's going to catch it and might be wide open, and he's going to score a touchdown, and that's usually what happens. And he is gone. So while it's funny, you could have used Jim Tomsula, Chip Kelly, Jim Harbaugh, Russell Wilson. Remember last year when Aaron scored the touchdown in Chicago and he did the belt and then he dropped the "I fucking own you," and it was cool. Like, it was, no one could even talk shit because, like, and then they brought up all the stats. It's like, yeah, he literally owns the Bears. I would say Russell Wilson owned the 49ers. I mean, ownage over every coach, specifically Kyle. 2-0 last year were just major blows, and he was just, there was no answer for him. He could run left, he could run right, he could throw short, he could throw deep. It was like you were playing Russell Wilson.
He could be on a bad team. He could be on a good team.
It didn't matter. I would say no team celebrated as much. And the NFC West is very, very happy, the 3 playoff teams. But the 49ers have to be the happiest. They never – now, technically, they have to see him next year, but they don't have to see him like 8 more times over the next 4 years is a big deal. They have to see him once over the next 3 years, right?
Yeah. It's a huge deal. And they don't have to play him in Seattle. Like, Trey Lance has to play in Seattle, and Denver's no easy place to play, which is where the 49ers are going to play him.
Well, I saw Kawakami tweet, like, the Niners, if they would have called, would have chipped in a pick, right? Hey, you want a 4th?
What would the Niners have included? Jimmy?
You see how Seattle gave Russell and a 4th? I think they would have included the 4th. Don't you? Like, if you called John Lynch, like, to get this done, you have to include the 4th. What would you say to John? Would you include the 4th?
You promise not to trade for Deshaun?
Yeah, you can't control that. But
I would have traded the 4th then, yes. Would you have thrown Garoppolo in? Garoppolo has to go to Seattle in order for this deal to happen.
Well, I think, yeah, you would do whatever it takes to get Russell Wilson out of there.
This is in the history of – we talk about the history of trades. When the Niners traded Joe Montana, the division did not rejoice because they had Steve Young waiting, right? When the Colts moved off of Peyton Manning, the division did not rejoice because they had Andrew Luck waiting.
Hadn't Steve Young just won the MVP?
Steve Young had won the MVP. When the Packers moved on from Brett Favre, the division did not rejoice because Aaron Rodgers was waiting next. I mean, one of the all-time your neighbor's pain is your glory. This is up there.
I would say this too. One thing I'd say I give the Niners credit for historically, a little like the Packers, a little like some of Andy's teams, they've just always felt like they've attempted to have a good backup. It doesn't mean it always works. Draft CJ Beathard and he sucks. But they're always they really value the quarterback position. Pete Carroll, you would say, didn't really. He had Russell. Their backup was always irrelevant. So when this move happens, it's not like, well, let's see what Jordan Love got. They've never had a backup. Remember they had a couple-year stretch where they had the kid from TCU? It's like, I remember watching TCU. I didn't even think that guy was that good. They never gave a shit about the backup quarterback. This year, it felt like, yeah, they had like Geno Smith. It's like, good luck there, buddy. But they never draft quarterbacks. This is just like, it's all for one. Like, say what you want about the Packers. They did attempt to have a contingency plan. Say what you want about Belichick. He did attempt with Jimmy Garoppolo to have a backup plan. Seattle does not even thought about it. Like, there was like, yeah, we'll play with Drew Lock. They just, it feels like they don't really value that position besides just, yeah, Russell's our guy. And now it's just, that's where it feels over. So if you're the Niners, like, you will gladly play Drew Lock. You will gladly play draft Kenny Pickett. Please take Malik Willis. Do whatever you want. Now, if they were to get Deshaun Watson, that would be an immediate problem for Kyle, for Sean McVay, and for the Kingsbury, right? That would be a problem for the NFC West because you would be like, well, Seattle's right back in the mix. But as long as they do not do that and just play with, Trubisky or whatever they're going to do, draft a guy. Sorry,
I think you got to play. If Drew Lock's in this trade, you're playing with Drew Lock. Now,
unless you draft a guy or something, yeah,
draft a guy. But to me, like, you're not bringing in Mitchell Trubisky if you just brought in Drew Lock.
Drew Lock's pretty terrible. Drew Lock's pretty bad.
I know, but maybe he's part of this trade. Why? Just because Denver?
Well,
we got to get him out of here.
Yeah, you do need who's going to play quarterback for you.
I know. That's
what I'm saying. They do not ever have quarterbacks, so it's not like part of, to me, the Drew Lock thing is more of a necessity.
Has Russell Wilson been the single greatest? Aaron Rodgers has not tortured the 49ers, right?
Well, I was thinking about it today, guy. When he resigns, that's a big deal, and that means they're good. The Niners have, Kyle's beaten them how many times? Twice in the playoffs. Like, he's been their quarterback during that time. Like, they have beat Aaron Rodgers 4 times in the playoffs. He's beat him a couple times in the regular season, but you'll always take regular season losses for playoff wins. He has not torched them by any means.
No. Russell has been their tormentor. You said the record earlier, right?
16-4.
16-4. I mentioned Barry Bonds earlier because I pulled it up with the intent to use it here. When you talk about 16-4, that's like Barry. I don't think Barry hit 800 against anybody, and Barry owned a lot of people. Barry owned Andy Ashby. You remember Andy Ashby? Barry had a 377 batting average, a 514 on base. His OPS was 1,363. He hit 7 home runs off of Andy Ashby and walked 15 times in 53 at-bats. Owned him. 80% win rate against another team? 80%.
And doesn't it feel like sometimes they always go, quarterback is not a win-loss. There's not a win-loss stat for quarterbacks. Well, this one there kind of is because he's dominated.
Yeah, I would say
dominated.
This is not pitchers. I think quarterbacks is way more win-loss than, say, a pitcher's stat.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't always had the best players around him.
No. Well, him and DK felt like, regardless how weird it's gone for them in a couple moments the last couple years, they play well against the Niners. Like those two. And Lockett. If you told me how many touchdowns does Lockett have the last 5 years against the Niners, I would guesstimate 11. Could be off, but that's what it feels.
Yeah, how many of his touchdowns were 30 yards or more on a 3rd down and 17?
Lockett has torched the Niners. Those deep bombs from Russell. Again, it's the ball that leaves your TV screen where Jimmy, we've learned, this thing's going to get picked. With Russell, this is a touchdown.
Yeah, it leaves the top of the TV screen for a while. It's like, where is that thing?
He's, if not the best, he's top 2 or 3 greatest deep ball thrower in the history of the league. His deep ball is just a thing of beauty, right?
Yeah, it's one of the best. And I also think part of what makes the Niners really good is their pass rush. And despite the fact that his offensive lines, he's had some really bad offensive lines, he's part of his skill is he makes up for that. This year he didn't. This year was weird. This year, you remember, was it the Eagle game? He took that weird sack. Was it the Eagle game?
You thought he was chubby.
I thought he was chubby. I did.
He looked chubby when you saw him at Stanford?
it was hard to tell because he was wearing a sweatsuit with like a zip-up sweat jacket, and those things always kind of bunch right here. If there's a zipper. It's why I don't like a full zipper hoodie, because they bunch. Any belly you have looks even bigger.
Yeah,
and
it'll expose you.
But that's what he was wearing. I remember thinking like he didn't look like his most fit self. But then I saw a video of him yesterday or 2 days ago doing some running. Did you see that video? I don't know. It looked like it was in Hawaii or something on a football. Like
he looked good. Didn't he look pretty good?
He looked good. So maybe he just put on the James Harden suit, got himself traded, and now he's back in great shape. But incredible for the Niners. There is in the chat, and as expected, you and I plan to talk about this. What does this do for Trey Lance? Well, he's got to be better than the Seahawks quarterback this year now, which I don't think we would have said about him when Russell Wilson was the guy in Seattle.
Well, you would say going into next season, if Russell had not been traded, before it's impossible to know what was coming in his improvement, he would be the fourth best quarterback in the division. And anyone listening knows this ain't no Kyler Murray show, but Kyler Murray has accomplished. I mean, he's just been in the league now for 3 years and been pretty good, right? He's had some low moments late in the season, but Trey Lance now, to me, has more even added pressure on him because the Niners have now added pressure on them. Like this is, guy, they were a 10-win team and they went 0-2 against this team. So to me, the expectations are going to be to beat the Seattle Seahawks. We've seen the 49ers, like they can rack up other wins. They've struggled to win these games, right? And you look at some of these teams like Dallas. How do you get to 12 wins? You take advantage of your division. You go 5-1, you go 6-0. New England did it for years. The Niners have been competing to win 10, 11, 12 games and going 3-3 in the division, 2-4 in the division. You add 2 more wins. If I tell you right now that the Niners sweep Seattle, wouldn't you say their over-under wins would be 10.5? I mean, that's they should be able to rack up some dubs. And again, it falls on the young quarterback, but I think there is. We talked about the NFC, right, is going to be down. We talked about now the Niners do have to play the AFC West, but they do get 2 of those games at home. And I would say ultimately, if you have the Rams and the Packers, and they've deserved it, right?
And they play. I'm not being funny. They play at the Raiders, which you would think could actually be not. It's not a horrible road disadvantage, right? Could be a lot of
could be a Niner home game. But you would say the Rams and the Packers, for a regular season standpoint, or even though the Niners have owned the Rams and have taken care of the Packers now 2 of the last 3 years in the playoffs, the Packers are better suited with Aaron Rodgers to win 12 games because they have Aaron fucking Rodgers, and the 49ers are with a first-time starter. But you would say roster-wise, if you just go Trey Lance can be the 14th best quarterback in the NFL, not like Rodgers to be 1, right? Not like Mahomes to be 2, but just the 14th best, I would say they should win 11, 12 games because their team is stacked, right? Their team, they have an excellent team and an elite coach. So, but that's the pressure. There was pressure. Part of the reason why we were so hard on them this year, there was a ton of pressure. They rolled back the team. They thought they were a playoff team, and then they didn't go to the young guy. They went to Jimmy because they thought they were a playoff team. And ultimately, by the skin of their teeth, do you have skin in your teeth? It worked.
Skin of their teeth. Yep.
Right? It worked, but I think there is going to be equal amount of pressure. It's going to feel different because it's got a young quarterback, so you're going to have to take some lumps. But not making the playoffs next year in the NFC would feel like, if I tell you right now that 49ers miss the playoffs, as of March, wouldn't that just sounds devastating out loud?
Again, because who is? If you're saying they're not, then tell me the 7 teams that are. And what you're going to tell me is a team that's worse than them right now, or several teams that are worse than them right now, even with a rookie quarterback. Because the point on Trey Lance is not that Trey Lance has to become the fully blossomed version of Trey Lance right now.
No.
But he does have to be good enough. And project or not, is he ready? Is he not ready?
I think it's fair to call him a project.
Yeah, but the reason I don't like, because that creates a whole other conversation, which is project means different things to different people. You can be a project and also good enough to start for your team, right? Project can also mean doesn't belong on the field. And I don't think he's that version of a project. I think we saw enough that he should be on the field, and he's not going to be the guy that you put it on his shoulders, but he's still good enough to win with. Is that how you view him as a project?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that any young quarterback is a project because they're constantly improving.
Yeah, that is the not dramatic way to use the word project. Their schedule, football team, Cardinals, obviously. Sorry, I'll leave the division out of it. At the Falcons, at the Panthers, at the Broncos, at the Raiders, at the those are their road games, plus their divisional road games. Saints, Bucks, Chiefs at home, Chargers at home, at the Bears, Dolphins at home. Like, they're going to be favored in most of those games outside of the division.
I think a huge thing they got to figure out is they swept the Rams, right? And they got swept in the other two games, or the other two teams. So they went 2-4 in the division.
Yeah.
I would say at minimum they got to find a way to go 3-3 or 4-2. If you go 4-2, to me, they're an 11+ win team. If you're going 2-4, then yeah, it's gonna be one of those, like, the last couple of weeks you're trying to get that 6-7 seed. But what really killed them this year? It really wasn't the Tennessee loss. It really wasn't the Colts loss. It was getting swept by Seattle and swept and beaten by Colt McCoy. Those 3 games were enormous swing. Like, you're gonna lose some of these random. Like, you might lose to the New Orleans Saints, right? That happens, right? We remember a couple years ago when they made the Super Bowl, they lost to the Falcons. You cannot be losing when you play the Arizona Cardinals backup quarterback.
Yeah.
I would say at minimum, you got to go 3-3. Because to me, 2-4 is what shitty teams do. I bet if you look at what the Jags, I mean,
you got to win.
They won one game, so Jags might have got 2-4.
You got to go 3 out of 4 against Seattle and Arizona. Meaning you can't split with them and can't get swept by them.
But even if you go, but here's all you got to do: sweep Seattle and then split the other two teams. Isn't that fine?
Yeah.
4-2, and you're in great shape.
They're going to be favored in 9 of their 11 non-divisional games.
You're saying Tampa, the Saints, the Bears.
I'm saying football team favored, Falcons.
I wish they would have gone Commandos.
Commandos. I like that better. Commandos favored, Falcons favored, Panthers favored. What's that? 3. We can leave Denver out for now, but I could see them being favored in that game. Saints favored, Bucks at home favored, Chargers at home
where's
favored.
the Denver game?
Road game.
Probably depend what time of year it is, right?
Yeah, at Chicago favored, at Miami favored, or Miami at home favored. So maybe they're not favored at home against Kansas City. Maybe they're not favored at Denver.
To me, it would depend, like, are they, is it week 9 and they're both like, 6-2, and Denver's proven they're good, they would probably be like a 2 or 3 point favorite right at home. Be one of those.
I mean, and you'd go, and Russ has had 16-4 against this team before.
If I tell you it's Niners opening up week 1 at Denver, might be a pick 'em or something.
That would be a great opener. Would you want that for Russ?
Yeah, I mean,
would you want that for Trey?
It's 17 games. It just is.
Get it out of the way.
There's not.
It's
really.
not.
I'll tell you this: like the
don't
Saints,
hate Fangio being gone for that.
I'll tell you this: the Saints and the Bucks. We bemoan and diminish those two teams. Wouldn't you say both those two teams have good defenses?
Yeah.
If I just tell you, like, opening weekend at New Orleans against the Saints, that's week 1. We'd be like, oh, they're gonna beat them. Well, their fucking defense is legit. Right? That's not an easy. I'd say Todd Bowles.
That's a hard place to play.
The Saints.
Superdome.
Yeah, and when you're week 1, it's not like you suck yet.
Or what do they call it now? Is it Caesars? Is that the one that got Caesars? If I'm remembering Joey Molinaro's promo code Raj.
Yeah, I think it's Caesars.com or something. Caesars Bowl, CaesarsCrypto.com or something.
That was a good one. John, before we move on, and there's plenty to move on to, let's tell the people about our friends at we're going to do this right now. Let's tell the people about our friends at Indeed. Indeed.com/ham. Indeed.com/ham. Basically what the Denver Broncos were like, we need an MVP. The hell are we going to do? How do we find one right now?
Well, Guy, so if you're hiring like the Broncos were, Indeed is the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Indeed is the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or else you don't pay. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping to find candidates with the right skills, you need one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Indeed partners with you every step of the way, Guy. Every step of the way to find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. How do you beat that? You're looking for candidates. You're listening. You're in charge of HR at your company. Go to Indeed.com/ham.
Indeed.com/ham. Because what did the Broncos decide? They decided that Russell was an instant match. They were like, we did the 135 skill tests on Russ, and he has all the skills to fit our needs. They probably skipped the virtual interview, but you're not going to want to do that. You're going to want to do the virtual interview. And the good news is that Indeed, it's as easy as clicking a link. There's no new software to download. It's free to use for any job you post. So whatever some people are using Zoom, some people are using Google Meet, some people are using coffee shops, whatever you use, you don't have to add anything or learn any new software. You just use Indeed.com/ham, $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/ham. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/ham to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/ham. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire. You need Indeed. Why are you grinning?
Because loyal Padre fan Daniel Jeremiah, he just said he had a good tweet. Side note: baseball needs to get their stuff together. This is ridiculous. Read the room. Like you're just getting lapped. No one cares. Now that they could be having spring training right now. This would.
I was listening to MLB radio because I've been on an MLB radio kick the last week or so when I've been in the car, and one of the guys was like, "Baseball players, I love you players, but you got to read the room. There's a war going on." He's like, "I watched a soccer game. It had 30,000 people there. You're getting passed. The WNBA, you're getting passed. The college basketball tournament, you're getting passed." I'm like, okay, I understand the spirit of your point, but I don't think the war is why baseball players should take what they think is a bad deal. And I'm pretty sure while soccer is growing, I don't know.
I think some of these cities, I think Austin is a good example and Seattle is a good example, have incredible home environments. But I would imagine if you look at the television ratings of those MLS, like the environment is better than the amount of people at home watching the game. People are acting like all these soccer games are like Augusta meets the Final Four meets an NFL playoff game. It's like no one's actually watching them, but yet they're fun to go to. People are attending.
They look like a great time.
Yeah.
A correction. Thank you, Nate. I made a mistake. The Saints game is at home this year. The Saints game is not in New Orleans. So same with Tampa. Yeah, did I say that was a road game?
But the point remains that when you play those two defenses, it's going to be a hard test for a young quarterback.
Yeah.
It'd be hard. Kyle and Jimmy figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
Not Kyle figuring it out. Kyle can get guys open. It's hard for
Executing
Jimmy to executing against.
For sure.
Pierre Paul's, 3 fingers chasing him. Who, in fairness, he's battled back very well from that incident.
He has.
Remember that? Remember the HIPAA on Twitter? People are like, HIPAA! Leave him alone! HIPAA! HIPAA! It was a lot of HIPAA. That was when I first learned about HIPAA. Jason
Did Schefter
Pierre-Paul.
ever go down for that?
No. Because didn't he tweet out the X-ray or something? I thought. That's a long time ago.
Yeah. Was it the X-ray? Is that what it was?
I thought it was a picture of the finger or something.
What does this do to the Jimmy? What does Russell Wilson's trade to Denver do to the Jimmy Garoppolo trade market?
Well, it removes the team.
It does.
And we don't, there's a chance General Patton would say we were never that interested. He would have been a desperate move for us. So we had about 7 different options before we got to that point. Is that fair?
I mean, the spirit of what you're saying is fair. I have a hard time finding 7 different options for them, but yes, I do agree with the spirit.
7 would be strong, but he was our last option of the options that we thought were viable.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they had a lot of great options, so I do think he was an option for them. But yeah, maybe they would have preferred to sign a younger player. Maybe they would have preferred to do a little more of a rebuild. Drew Lock. I can't imagine their head coach wanted to come in and play year 1 with Drew Lock. So what would they have done? Tried to trade for Kirk Cousins? Tried to trade for? I think Aaron was probably number 1.
Well, I'd say once he was an option, let's say the Russell thing hadn't fallen through. What if Nate Hackett was like, hey, man, let's just trade a 3rd-round pick for a year of just try out Jordan Love. I like the guy, and just kind of go from there?
Yeah, could have. Yeah, it's a good point. Could have.
Because anytime you're a first-year head coach, you do get that year 1 of just like, we're just trying some stuff out,
Yeah, would he prefer to work with a player that he knows, like Jordan Love? But
Jimmy, they do know the same offense. So
my ultimate point is they may not have loved that option. I do think it had to be a real consideration for Denver, Jimmy Garoppolo. He had to be. There just weren't that many options.
One thing I saw a clip from Dan Orlovsky today, and I think this is pretty clear. I've seen McAfee, who was kind of beating around the bush because he doesn't want to crush him because he's in Indy. I think one thing is coming out. It's pretty clear about Carson Wentz.
Had him in studio. Already apologized to Carson once, right?
Why do you think? Yeah, why do you think Jimmy's going to become an option there if they get rid of Carson? Is because the people that kind of have an idea and are trying to say it without totally crushing the guy, of like Indy doesn't just not like him because of the play. He 27-7 in his play. Besides the last 2 weeks, really wasn't as bad as I think the way people. They don't like the guy that much. And
which is crazy because Frank Reich it's not crazy to me they don't like the guy, but it's crazy to me that they're suddenly shocked by this. Frank was around him.
But I do wonder if when Frank was around him, younger, a little more humble, I'm the humblest, and just a little more normal when you're new, things are going well. Couple years removed, a lot of money, a lot of scar tissue. I wonder if he's a kind of a different human being, the guy that they got. And the point being that one thing Jimmy does hang his hat on is character, leadership, and the guy, right? It's well known people like him. So I do wonder, are the Colts now in play for Jimmy where you just kind of cut bait on Carson because you're out the pick, and then I can just give you a 5th-round pick, and that's contingent on a 3rd if he's my full-time starter this year when we make the playoffs?
So somebody I saw the other day, I don't remember who it was. I wish I could remember. I don't remember who it was, but they quoted an old Baron Davis quote, not a tweet. Their line was, Baron Davis once told me that money doesn't change you, it just reveals who you really are. That was a great quote. But yeah, I could see as it relates to Carson, but I could see Jimmy there because what do we always talk about with coaches is like teams tend to make an extreme adjustment. So you go from a hard ass coach to a friendly coach. You go from a soft coach to a hard ass coach. And I wonder if they would really value Jimmy Garoppolo's personality reliability, right? Unfortunately, he's not that reliable physically. I don't think you can say he's unreliable.
Literally injured.
He's injured. He's injured right now. But I wonder if they would really value that. Like, hey, we think that just being solid is going to be good enough. The problem is he's kind of like Carson from a play style standpoint. They're not the same, but there's just a level of unpredictability in a bad way with both of them. But I wonder if they would really value that. Like, let's just stabilize our locker room. Maybe they'd get a positive report on him already, right? They've got DeForest Buckner. Maybe that would be part of what they try to do. Yeah, I don't think that's crazy.
He did officially have the shoulder surgery today. Now, anytime anyone ever gets surgery, especially a guy that is, not a lock to come back on a team, but you could say even when a guy's coming back on a team, it's like, surgery went great. Perfect surgery. Elite doctor. Nailed this one 10 out of 10. Garoppolo wrote that, successful surgery, and the plan and the hope is that he'll throwing ahead of training camp. So, I mean, we already knew that, but I do believe we see this all the time with injuries is, especially, I would say, a serious injury. And any time that you have surgery March 8th, and I don't think you can throw till July, like that's not like, hey, man, he had a little cleanup, he'll be out 2 weeks. He should be able to train and, by early May. This is several months of rehab. There is no guarantee if I'm a team that he's ready by training camp. If you and I, we were GM, coach, an owner, GM, the conversation we would have, no matter what the doctor tells us, there is no definitive 100%. I trade for Jimmy if I'm the Colts. He is ready day one of training camp, right? We would have to go. It's a coin flip. Even if we saw the medical and everyone said it's good, because how often do we see like a month from now he's having some inflammation, and it happens a lot with knee injuries, right? Non-ACL, like a little MCL, and then a couple months later it's like, well, we've seen it with Wiseman. I think Jaron Jackson, who was basically Wiseman, but that shit happens sometimes, and these are younger players. I'd be nervous with the shoulder. I really would. You could argue like you would almost just, hey man, we'll give you a flyer pick like 6th, 7th. Like your guy not only is not only injured, there is no way any of us can know for certain that he will just be healthy by mid-August, right? You could say that.
Well, they just did that trade too for Carson, right?
But he was healthy when they acquired him, at least.
No, I know. I'm just saying, like, they just did a trade that was dependent on a quarterback who has They just did a trade that the compensation was dependent on the quarterback's availability because the quarterback had a history of unavailability.
But that did cost a lot more than this one would cost, right? Because I'm at the point, really, like, when I see people tweeting about, like, I am not worried about the compensation at all. It's just get them off your books, move on, and just pivot.
Yeah, it feels like it would feel like a loss if they had to cut him and didn't get a 5th-round pick for him, right?
Yeah, but my point is, like, when the season ended after it kind of went well, before you knew shoulder surgery, I think, could they get like a 3rd or whatever? And you start kind of getting greedy. Like, then they'll have like 3 threes and a 2 and then a couple threes next year. Like, they got a lot of wiggle room. I don't even care anymore. If I'm trying to put myself in Kyle or Parag, like, to me, it's okay. You can justify everything that the money you paid him, the pick you used to acquire him. Like, your ROI exceeded anything you gave him when he started as a quarterback for you 2 of the last 3 years, right? Just get rid of him and now pivot.
I do wonder if Indianapolis' situation specifically gives the Niners, I'm not going to say leverage, but a team that would be incentivized to trade, because they do have a lot of balls in the air, right? With this Carson Wentz thing, like, they don't want to pay. They don't want Carson's contract to become fully guaranteed of $27 million, whatever it is, on March 18th. But they also probably don't want to cut him if they don't have another option. And it wouldn't be ideal for them to cut him and then have to go through free agency and try to beat other people out for Jimmy, even if they think they could get him. Like, the trade would just give them some certainty in a situation that clearly has a bunch of moving parts for them.
But there are other teams, like the Steelers do not have a quarterback. There's a rumor about the Saints, right? I mean, there are other teams that legitimately don't have quarterbacks. That's why
you'd want to trade for him.
Yeah.
Well, I think there is some.
My point is he's going to get traded, but I'm just cool with getting rid of him for. If you told me it was like, hey, they got rid of him for a sixth that's contingent, the best case scenario it could be a 4th. I'd be like, that's fine, right?
It'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you're too worried about, like, you're not
trading the player. You're not trading the player we thought you were trading a month ago.
Like, you agree, ultimately, John Schneider is kind of getting judged on the compensation. Like, you're not really getting judged on the compensation. You will just get applied to just moving on from him, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah.
No, apply to moving on. I'm just saying you'll just move on, and people are focused on the future, not worried about Jimmy, right? Like, ultimately, John Schneider, to me, the scary thing is, like, the number one thing they'll say about you potentially moving forward is not you were the guy that drafted Russell Wilson. It's you were the guy that traded Russell Wilson, even if he, quote unquote, wanted out, right?
Especially if the next 2 or 3 years don't go well, Pete Carroll's gone. You chose, quote unquote, it'll look, you chose Pete over Russell. Russell still has, I mean,
well, they got being 1-7 written all over them, and the Seattle doing a huge leak from the Seattle front office about all the Russell drama. Like, it wasn't all us, man. We didn't choose this life.
Yeah, I know.
Might even want to do that maybe in like April, and then redo it again during the season because people forget. You're going to have to do some of that. Where, to me, the Niners, which I hope doesn't happen, and it might, but, like, do they trade Jimmy and then release that, they didn't really love how it all went down with the surgery? Because I've seen some rumors on the internet.
Historically, it's not how they operate.
Kyle doesn't operate. They just keep it to themselves and talk shit.
Don't want to piss off Don Yee.
No, you don't. And in fairness, I think Don would say, well, you fucking drafted a quarterback last year. Like, what, we're supposed to just, you don't listen to us. Why should we listen to you? Right? It is, you and I both talked off the podcast. Like, it was understandable if you're Don Yee. Like, if you push back the surgery a little bit to put a little juice in your guys' hands, right? Mm-hmm. Why do I just let the Niners do everything? Even if they claim, like, we're working with Jimmy. Like, a lot of teams act like that. We're working with this guy.
Well, did you guys call me first when you're talking deals, or do you call the other teams first, right? You call the other teams first. John Lynch doesn't call Don Yee after every phone call.
Well, I think one thing that will be fascinating is when Jimmy's traded, both the articles probably in like 2 weeks, like the Sando insider piece, right, or the Wickersham insider piece, about really how the two camps work together, right? Like, ultimately, Seattle had to work with Russell to get him to okay it, and ultimately, if they trade him before free agency, Jimmy has to okay it, right?
Yes, and part of that's where you come back to compensation, right? If the Niners somehow get a trade that they're really happy with, then they have less incentive to badmouth Jimmy Garoppolo after he's gone. Yeah. If they have to cut him, now you're like, okay, we look bad. We have to explain why this happened this way, right?
Agreed.
So, other elements of this. We've gotten a lot of this, John, in the chat. Let me see if I can find one of these here real quick. Matthew, now officially time for a Raider rebuild. And there are a lot of questions. That was the only one I saved here. But there are a lot of questions about Russell Wilson, the AFC West, and the way things shake out. And you said earlier in the show, let's just not assume. You can't assume that Denver hits the ground running. One way to look at this is kind of make the case for why it's not as difficult from a Raiders perspective. You'd say, well, we think our coach is if I were going to craft it, I'd say we think our coach is better than the Chargers coach.
I think you can say that with a straight face right now. Josh McDaniels is a much more accomplished coach than Nate Hackett, right?
And you could say the same thing about Denver. Yeah. And you'd say, well, maybe it takes Russell a little time to get going. I'm saying you'd say it about you could make the case if you were the Raiders, you'd say that about two of the teams. You'd say it about Staley and you'd say that about Hackett. And now you made the point earlier, it's not like Russell's coming in cold to this offense. He did learn. Shane Waldron was his OC. Didn't get him fired in Seattle. So there is that element. But, Pat Shurmur's the OC in Denver. It's not exactly a McVay minion.
He is?
Is he not? Who's Hackett's OC? I mean, Hackett's calling plays.
Yeah, I think they fire. I think Pat Shurmur was fired. I think Hackett it's Hackett. And maybe brought over one of the guys from Green Bay. It's not Pat. It's not.
Oh, that's right. He did bring the guy from Green Bay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Bad coach roster.
Shurmur was Fangio's guy.
Josh Outen is the OC,
so,
which is the guy from Green Bay.
I don't think you need to. I mean,
no.
Listen. I would struggle to pay Derek in the 150 to 150 million range if I was Josh without spending a year with him. I would have no problem trying to build this team if Derek will play on the year, which I think we both kind of agree that, he's less likely to do a hold out or a hold in. Like, he's going to want to play for Josh. Though, if we were his representation, it's pretty clear no quarterback of his stature plays on the last year of his deal. Now, it's unique circumstances because this Gruden got fired in the middle of the year. It threw everything out of whack. But to me, it's just... I think you could just try to have a good free agency, have a good draft, and just roll Derek back on the one-year contract. But we talked about it with Keim and Cliff, and that's not college football. It's like coaches never play in the last year of the deal, and they didn't. They got extended. It never happens in college football. It never happens with quarterbacks who are good. It happens with backup quarterbacks, but not starting quarterbacks of Derek's top 12 ilk.
Well, because the tag is not really something you want to do.
Yeah. But to me, if he's worthy of a tag, then to me he's worthy of doing a deal. Unless it's to me, if they're tagging him, it's gotten kind of weird, right? That'd just be a weird situation. But we're a year away from that. Now I saw the quarterback tag's $29 million. I think this year that's $9 million more than he's making, and next year that quarterback tag with all these new contracts only going to go up. Right, it's the average of the top five. What's the quarterback tag next year? 36. So for him to go from 20 to 36 is not the worst thing when he's already just made $140 million. I think one thing's clear. Did you see on Instagram? I didn't see on Twitter. You're not blocked, are you, on Twitter by Derek?
I don't think so, but
he was the CMAs, the Country Music Awards, were in Vegas, and he gave out the album. He gave out the album of the year, and I do think he takes a lot of pride in just the Raiders, the Vegas Raiders. He announced when
he's wearing all black.
He looked pretty good. He had a good looking Rolex on. That he was welcome to the home of us. I think he takes a lot of pride. He wants to be there. I just think the contract thing is very, very complicated for them. And I think to me it's one of the most fascinating things in the league. What are they going to do? Are they just not going to pay him? And then is he just going to be cool with it? It's yeah, man, I'm just focused on football. We'll figure that out. Because in fairness, if you're him, you play well, Josh's not going to be able to upgrade, and they will pay you. If you prove that you can go to the playoffs. But think how hard it is to go to the playoffs. He is the fourth best quarterback, and he's not bad. He's a top 13, 14 quarterback. Mahomes is a top 2 quarterback. With Brady gone, yeah, he's definitely top 2. Russell's a top 5 or 6. Herbert, my friends in the NFL, had him valued just in a vacuum as a top 5 quarterback last year. That's why.
John, if he and Russell were both available, the compensation you get for Herbert would far exceed what the Seahawks just got for Russell.
So you have the worst quarterback in a division, and your quarterback's good.
Yeah, I don't think it prevents them from going to the playoffs.
No, it doesn't. Because Herbert, they beat the Chargers last year when they had Herbert.
I think they're okay. I think it fully comes down to what you're paying. And I think Derek Carr will ultimately not be in like, now Rodgers has since tweeted from the Twitter account that he has where the emoji is just his bare foot, that yes, he is coming back to Green Bay, but the details of the contract that have been reported are not accurate. He hasn't signed it yet. The details that Rap Sheet said were 4 years, $500 million with $153 million guaranteed.
You're saying Rodgers said, I'm in.
Rodgers said, I am going to the Packers, but don't believe the story that I have signed or that those are the details of my contract.
To me, if I'm a Packer fan, because it's like every time it's not done, it's like, okay, I'm cool.
Well, I saw in the chat, like someone said, like Rodgers tweeted. I was like, oh God, what is this going to be? But it was just him basically like clarifying, but saying I'm back. I don't think Derek's going to end up signing that contract. I think part of it is I expect Derek Carr to take less money. This is no inside information, but I think he values what you just said, being in Vegas. I don't think he's going to make them or try to make them make him the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, which is what every quarterback eventually tries to become if they sign a new contract.
It's weird. Everyone listening, $20 million, we'd all sign up for make $20 million. But if you're making $20 million, even if you would give them a team-friendly deal, because now the numbers are going $45, $50 million, right. Even if you would sign for like a 4-year, $35 million a year, you are leaving $15 million on, like that's just a substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
And he has had his leg shattered before. Remember there was a Thursday night game that Mariota had to play because he got KO'd, he hurt his hand, or like it's a violent game, right? At any moment, like your knee could get snapped. So it is just, if we're his representation, it's like there is massive amount of risks, right? Even though unlike like TJ Watt or whatever last year, part of the reason like you've never signed a big deal, or even Lamar, like you're the 30th pick, 32nd pick, you've never signed a big contract. Derek has. Like Derek has more money than he'll ever know what to do with right now. He's set for life. His family's set for life. He was rich when we knew him, and he was a freshman in college. But it's just it's still business. Like it's just pretty risky.
He had a nice Hummer H2, and the bag that you put on the spare tire was the DC logo, like the DC skate brand logo. That was
good.
Yeah, it was good.
It looks sweet. Do you agree though? Like ultimately, like even if I'm cool with like I will give you a discount to help you build a team. I know you guys will,
right?
Or at least I believe that what you telling me, because in the book Belichick told Brady that and then ended up not doing it. So it's like I think you get very, very hesitant to trust people in the NFL because you've seen them go both ways. Even though it behooves the Raiders. You would say when Derek's been there, the Raiders have been very aggressive, right? In his tenure as Raiders quarterback.
Yep. And you made that point on Sunday's show, and it was a good point. And I think if I'm looking at it from the perspective of, okay, well, if I'm Derek and I'm making a pros and cons list, why would I take less money to be here?
It was a groin injury.
A groin injury. Look, obviously I would prefer $50 million a year, but I've been here. I've been on this team. I haven't played in the playoffs. We've made the playoffs once. I wasn't available. I've had a multitude of different coaches.
Played playoff game this year.
Oh yeah. I don't remember really. I scrubbed that game apparently from my memory.
It was a boy. It was a good ending.
That was a big deal. But I'm about to play quarterback for Josh McDaniels, who many people believe is one of the best offensive coaches in the league. I am not young anymore by NFL standards. I'm in my prime right now. If I'm going to make anything of my career from not a financial standpoint, but a legacy, what can I accomplish? People have said for years, I'm not whatever I'm not. There's no better place for me to be. I got Darren Waller here. The Ruggs thing. Yeah, but I got Renfro. There is no better place for me to be. I'm where I want to be. There's no state income tax here in Nevada.
I think the one issue, like, the Cincinnati game really isn't that memorable beside him kind of fucking up at the end. His memorable moment, you would say, of his career was that Charger game, Sunday Night Football. Ziegler and Josh had nothing to do with it. So, like, you don't get equity with them for that moment. Right? Like, if your coach was returning, you would get a lot of equity for that moment, being in the fight and having a good game and helping your team win that game, which is by far the biggest win of his career. There's not even a close second. That win, that moment in front of 30 million people. Josh was on the other side of the country getting ready for a playoff game right the next week. Yeah. So it's like that to me is you have to have those moments. Like if you had a couple, like if this was Josh's second year, you'd be like, what are we doing? Just sign the guy. Let's rock and roll. But you don't get like that equity doesn't translate over when you get a new start. That speaks for all these teams, good or bad, that get new head coaches. Unless you're an all-time great player, like LaFleur had to capitulate to Rodgers right when he showed up, right? But there is a small percentage of players on that level. Like Josh has more leverage than Derek right now.
Right.
That can change fast, right? If Derek's cool, like, hey man, I'll play it out, and you're 5-0, and Derek's thrown 13 touchdowns, it looks awesome. You're like, yeah, what are we doing? Let's just go all in on this guy. We can win with this player. But you have to develop equity to make them truly, truly believe, these numbers, right?
Well, the owner too. Like Josh hasn't been there, but Mark Davis has, right?
Well, he's been to all these games. I guess 2 years ago he didn't show up.
Not to all of them. The AFC West from a quarterbacking standpoint is just a ridiculous division. Like your defensive coordinator matters. Your defensive personnel matters.
Well, it's got 2 Hall of Famers in their prime right now, right? Russell, Mahomes. It's got, I would say in our adult life, the fastest 2-year start to a quarterback's career we've ever seen in Herbert. And Derek is just a top 13, 14 quarterback in the league.
I think you could argue that Herbert's better than Russell right now, right?
Yes.
I think that like your buddies in the league who say he's top 5, like I think that's probably part of what they're saying.
He was better last year for sure.
Yeah. He was better. Now, is he better? Time will tell. But right now, his stock is higher than Russell's. Now, Russell's stock is down. Russell could bounce back. And the fact is that the Chargers have kind of now we're 2 years into Herbert's career, which is I'm not blaming Justin at all, but they have not maximized what they've gotten from the quarterback position, right? And as a franchise, they typically don't.
Remember how good he was in that game against the Raiders, though, Sunday night? It was not his fault they lost. He was awesome.
No. Let me be very clear. I'm separating him from full responsibility.
He did not call a run up the gut on 4th and 1 on their own 18. He actually verbally said it when he got it called into his headset.
There are just different types of divisions in the league, John. There's the AFC West from a quarterbacking standpoint, and then there's like the NFC South or the NFC East.
Yeah.
You just think about the quarterbacks in some of these divisions. So many.
So it's a memorable day in league history.
It is a memorable day.
But to me, they're just even when Watson gets traded, it's not the same. There's a chance we don't see this for another decade. A guy like Russell Wilson, a decade into his career, first ballot Hall of Famer, still awesome, gets traded. Like it doesn't happen in the NFL. Which I think is good. Like I think this makes it healthy. Like
totally.
This is why the league thrives.
Well,
like,
Joe was
franchise tag's good for the NFL.
Joe was 36, 37. Star movement is not good for sports.
But age inflation. What would you say, Joe's the mileage on his body? Wouldn't you say we're the equivalent of like a 43 back in 92?
And now 33 now is like being 28 then.
Yeah. I mean, he's had one injury. It was a mallet finger. Right, Joe had like reconstructed back, shoulders, elbows.
Yes, Joe's medical chart looked like an 85-year-old. Just
remember the visual in the was it the playoff game against the Houston Oilers where his elbow looked like the size of a volleyball? What was up with Montana's elbow?
Oh yeah, that's right. And that was like after the fact. He wasn't hurt in that game. It was he had that was the Chiefs game, right? The first year, I think.
Isn't that's just what it looked like when he was there? He could still throw.
Yeah,
it's like
it swelled. Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, it's funny. The NFL just has the right amount of stuff. Because stars don't get traded, but man, when they do, it's rare enough and it's big enough. I'm still kind of shocked at the compensation.
I am too.
Holy smokes! All right, if anything else breaks. If Jimmy Garoppolo gets traded this afternoon or whatever happens, you know where to find us. This has been a great pod, everybody. Thanks for hanging. If you're here on the YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to the podcast, same.
To me, Jimmy, I'm good Thursday morning or Sunday at about lunch.
Yeah, don't give me a Saturday 7 p.m., please.
Don't you, Parag, John, Kyle, I swear to God, if you go like Friday night, I'm gonna.
Stafford was a Friday afternoon, right? Or like late morning, maybe. Stafford was a midday.
That will not be cool.
Lynch was John Lynch. Remember, that was a big one. That was a Sunday night. Wait, was Stafford a Saturday night?
I don't remember.
There was a Saturday night something. What was it? Was it the Niners trade? The Niners trade to 3, I think, was a Saturday. I think Stafford was a Friday. I could be wrong about this timeline. I think the Niners trade was a Saturday evening.
I don't even like that.
No, we have requirements here. We don't care about what you do so much as we care about when you do it.
Yeah, to me, it's just the timing. It's the timing. I'm not trying to jinx it. Again, we have no control over this. It does feel like they got Friday afternoon written all over them, don't they?
The Niners?
Yeah.
Well, what day of the week is the 16th next week, and then come back 3 days to the 13th?
Wednesday is when free agency actually starts.
So Wednesday, and so Sunday is tampering. So you're right. Stuff actually starts happening a couple days before tampering.
I think the tampering starts started full go.
Officially.
Yeah. I think it officially starts. They basically
Sunday.
give 3 days, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then it starts like 10 a.m. and then Schefter will have like 17 tweets at 10:01 or 1 o'clock or whenever the time is. It'll immediately be like, whoa.
It's a consummation sensation.
It feels like a lot of deals are just going to get blown out of the water on Monday and Tuesday. Remember, it was like, Adam Silver is not comfortable with this. It doesn't really ever feel like Rodgers like, these guys just fucking do what you guys do.
Yeah, kind of. But then Russell steals his thunder and he's got to like. Has Aaron ever tweeted at the Packers before?
I think that move was a little bit like, listen, I've given the go-ahead, so I'm going to get some credit. Like, hey, guys, I'm coming back, but it's not done yet. It's a little weird, but I also think you want the credit for, like, it's not done yet, but, guys, I'm coming back. So give me a BJ in the replies because that's what he's getting, right, when you do that. Because then he does the love thing emoji. Like, that's for the fans. Correct?
Yeah, we're at you want to read why did you come back though? Do you believe the Packers are going to give you the players you need to get over the hump? I have my doubts, bro.
Bears fan 222.
Analyst T. Smith. It's a shame media outlets continue to post fake news, Aaron. Oh, but that one came from Ballsack Sports, so that's just having fun. Right on. Congrats, man. You want to get together and celebrate and rip a bunch of shots of Jaeger and listen to the Foo Fighters for old time's sake?
Who's that? David Bakhtiari?
Kyle Cousineau. Is Kyle lifelong Packer fan? Yeah, not a lot of. I mean, God,
I love a good comment section.
God, isn't it the best?
It's hard to beat.
Well, Twitter's had some challenges over the years, but the comment section has gotten progressively.
Comment section is strong.
Anyway, so all right, thanks for hanging with us, and tell your friends, tell your enemies, tell everybody in between. People you just don't tell them. You know, the people you're like, don't tell them. We don't want them. We want your loved ones and your haters.
That might be our move. It's just like whoever you hate and they know you hate and they hate you. Just shoot them like, hey, man, you might like this podcast.
Fuck you, bro.
But no, it's like, do be positive. Be like,
oh,
hey, man, here's a podcast. Enjoy.
I see.
Because you would never expect that text, right?
That's a good point.
Like if I just sent Ryan Grigson a text right now, like, hey, man, you see this player? He might get drafted in the 5th round. Thought you might like for the Minnesota Vikings. Check him out.
Like just reading this Zerline right up. Thought you might like this guy.
Yeah, this player feels right up your alley. Could really help you guys out in the interior offensive line. Good luck, buddy.
What if he drafts him? It's like, I hate to admit this, but Middlekauff found him. That son of a bitch. A spite share.
We're just kidding. Me and McAfee still hate you.
McAfee?
McAfee hates him.
Oh, you and McAfee.
Yeah, me and McAfee. Because he told McAfee, like, he used to yell at McAfee. I remember before Pat became a big thing, like one of the first stories I ever heard him tell once he left, one of the driving reasons was how mean his general manager was to him and made him question how much he loved football. I was like, I remember Buddy sharing this with me. It's like, oh my God, we can relate to Pat, this punter. Because he wasn't Pat McAfee at the time. He was just Pat McAfee, kind of the goofy punter. But it was like, it really resonated with all of us. Like he was just so adamant. He's like, the things this guy was telling, it was like, I've never been talked to like this. And I worked for Bill Polian, you know?
El Marco says Niners trade for 3 was a Friday afternoon while in Max Pro Day. I remember getting the notification at work. Says JD. It was a Friday. All right. Well, whenever it happens, we've got our power list of days. But anyway.
What a day.
You good? You good? You good for now?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for hanging, everybody.